Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Thank you. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanchari. Yamuna Tiravanchari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivircharya Asutrasita Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Abhay Charna Ravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anant Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Navdeep Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Swami Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srila Gurudev Ki Jai. So, good evening and Hare Krishna, everyone. We are reading a summary. This is a incentive taken by the ISKCON devotees of Sydney, Australia, to to do some reading and summarize. I take classes on cantos, or Srimad Bhagavatam Canto by Canto, and today is the final one, and I'll be summarizing hopefully all of Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 12. Right, so Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. Nasta Prayashu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. So, Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutle Srimate Bir Krishna Goswami Niti Namne Namo Hamsa Nikashaya Prabhupada Priyayate Suddha Shuddhi Nishtabhem Tasya Vakyanuvadine Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutle Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namne Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhuva Evacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so basically in one sentence, chapter Canto 12 of the Srimad Bhagavatam is all about Kaliyug, and it's very applicable to us since we are all in Kaliyug right now. And Srila Sukadev Goswami narrates to all the sages in the forest of Naimisharanya, and he predicts what's going to happen in future in Kaliyug. And we'll try to summarize it by chapter, that will make some sense. So chapter 1, written down some notes. Basically, there's other things also which I haven't mentioned, other than what Kaliyug is going to be like. There is some summarizing of what goddess of earth, Bhumi, how she feels about these wretched souls who are trying to, wretched souls of Kaliyug, trying to conquer her earth, her waters, pollute the place, and basically irreligious. There's a lot of things going on in Kaliyug, so what she thinks about that, there's a summary of that. And what happens during Annihilation, so there's a little bit on that, and then there's a final advice to Pariksit Maharaj. Now, we all know Pariksit Maharaj has been destined to be bitten by the snake bird, cursed by a Brahman boy in 7 days. So he consults in this last 7 days of his life about everything, and about what is religion and what a person should do before one dies, what is dharma, who is God, all these questions. So Sukadev Goswami answers him, and this part of Canto 12 gives him an idea of everything basically in Kaliyug, and about material annihilation, as I said, and the other things that I've also mentioned. It also describes when Pariksit Maharaj is finally bitten, and it also summarizes the entire Srimad Bhagavatam collection, all the topics that have been covered, all the subjects. And it also describes a little bit of the Virat Roop of Lord Krishna, just the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Virat Roop, as we know, is the universal form of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So some of those things. So anyway, the chapter 1 actually describes after Lord Krishna leaves, and after Pariksit Maharaj will leave, who are the kings who will rule this planet Earth, in chapter 1. Now, the dynasty, there are two dynasties. One is the moon dynasty, and another one is the sun dynasty. Lord Ram was born in the sun dynasty, and Lord Krishna was born in the moon dynasty. And what happens, after generation by generation, this is during Kaliyug. So these are kings who follow on. And Now, one of the dynasties is called the Magad, and how the Magad dynasty, they actually become quite degraded. There is no religion by the, as Kaliyug progresses. And what happens is they end up being extremely materialistic, obviously. But basically there is no truth, there is no honesty, there is no worship of Krishna, there is no cleanliness, there is cheating, lying, and these kings, they produce children out of Shudra women, and in event they produce demons, Rakshasas, and these are the kings that will rule. It has been predicted that they will rule over this earth. Now, there is one particular thing. Basically, by the end of this Kaliyug, everyone will become Shudras and Malichas, including those kings. But what happens is one of these kings in the line of the son of the moon dynasty, the minister, which means the servant of that government, like the king. Basically, kings are politicians in our day and age. The minister kills the king. So you might have heard there's a question always, who killed John F. Kennedy? And there's a big question mark. Well, we don't know, obviously. I don't know. Possibly some internal agencies in America, in the USA, they might have some confidential information which might it might establish who done it. But according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a generalization that in Kaliyug, the minister or the king is murdered by one of his own ministers. So whoever might have killed John Kennedy might have been one of his own ministers, who knows? According to Srimad Bhagavatam, the minister kills the kings and then establishes his own son on the throne. And then there's a prediction, there's a king who's going to be called King Nanda, who will destroy the Shatria order, that means, we have Brahmins, Shatriyas, Shudras, and Vaishyas, Savarnashram. The Kshatriya order is basically those who protect, and like our police officers or the army or something like that. But that order is going to be destroyed by this king, King Nanda. And what happens is not only that one particular king is murdered, the line of kings along the lines, mostly they are going to be killed by their servants, and they basically establish themselves as king. These kings would be like greedy, excessive violence. They'll be debauchees, which means a debauchee is one who covets somebody else's wife. So they just, take somebody else's wife. They are uncivilized. They've lost all spiritual strength. So chapter 1 describes all this. I'm basically covering all the main points, the essences, so that we can cover all the chapters, hopefully. Otherwise, the next chapter will be continued on Thursday. On August 4th. So here, the kings will devour citizenry. They will murder innocent women and children. As you know, it's happening everywhere in this world right now. Children and women in India, innocent women are being killed in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in all the many other countries. They're not just those countries. Innocent women and children, they're being abducted and they're being murdered. Cows are murdered, cows are killed, Brahmins are killed. The wives and property of other men are taken. These things are happening in Kaliyug at the moment. So there is a lack of practice of regulative principles. Right now we have regulative principles in the Hare Krishna movement. No meat eating, no fish, no eggs, no illicit sex life, no gambling, no intoxication. all those things. There's a lot of people already eating meat outside in our society who are not Krishna conscious and are not following the four regulative principles. It's already happening. You can see around us. So, and the citizens will imitate. It says the citizens will imitate low-class kings' character. So we shall not name the king. Right now, there's a king in one major country on this planet who we cannot name, but has said that has said a lot of crazy things, and people follow him. I mean, we have this corona case, and he said that you can drink bleach, and his citizens started drinking bleach to protect themselves from corona. So they kind of imitate and follow these crazy kings, low-class kings, and their behavior and their speech, how they speak, and then they are harassed by this Dame Lita, and then they are harassed by each other also, the citizens, and there'll be a lot of suffering. So basically that was chapter 1. Now going on to chapter 2. Let's see if I can find chapter 2. Right now, this chapter is titled "The Symptoms of Kaliyug," which is this Yuga. What's going to be happening in the age of Kali? It's really interesting. It really applies to us. It's not good news. Kind of, I'm the bearer of bad news. So at the end, actually, the Kaliyug is going to last for 432,000 years, our years. At the end, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, so I'll deliver the good news first. Lord Krishna is going to end up taking birth and remove irreligion and remove those rascals, those kings who dare to... they are basically murderers and thieves and bandits, low class, they dressed up as kings. Lord Krishna is going to take advent, and he's the personality of Godhead, he's Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is going to take birth, advent, and then he's going to remove, kill all these kings. So he's going to destroy, basically, all those who are following irreligion. After he kills all these demons, Kaliyug demons, Satyug, the next age, will begin, where everyone will be pious. So right now we are in a very contaminated state, and the good news is that Lord Krishna will take birth. He is going to take up birth as Kalki. So he'll be known as Lord Kalki. And he will appear in a village called Sambhala, in a Brahman, with his father, his parents would be Brahmins, and his fathers will be named Vishnu Yasya. And Lord Kalki will mount in his horse called Devdatta, and he will have a sword in his hand, and he'll roam the earth, killing millions of bandits disguised as kings. They are also, the two of Lord's devotees, they are very pious souls who are already residing incognito, which is like unknown and hidden, and they're waiting for the advent of Kalki to then restart this religion and help in the progeny, or initiate people into Satyug. So one of them is a descendant from Sun dynasty, and his name is Maru, and the other one is Devapi, and he is a descendant of he's a descendant of Maru, he is a descendant of Ishvaku, Devapi. His name is Devapi. The other person from the Sun dynasty is Maru. His name is Maru. And Devapi is a brother of Maharaja Shantanu, And they will reinitiate pious dynasties, and they're just waiting for Kaliyug to end. So they are there somewhere right now, watching what's happening in Kaliyug, and they will be there to see everything, right till the end. So the symptoms of Kaliyug, the average age, right now we can go up to 100. And not everyone goes to 100. There's like Australians, average is around 80. Well, a lot of Australians, they die around 80. In other countries, it's a little shorter. But average, it'll end up as 50 years. So they won't go above 50 years, which is really sad. There will be no religion. So no one will be worshipping God. Truthfulness, cleanliness, tolerance, mercy will be totally gone, diminished. And life and physical strength, memory, that will also be diminished. So people won't remember much. I mean, right now, we don't remember much anyway. I mean, I have to write a lot of points down in the book because I just can't remember everything. It's just one of those things. We are polluted, quite polluted. And by the age of the influence of Kaliyug. So anyway, wealth, that's going to be considered as a sign of good birth. So anyone's born in a wealthy family, they will be quite well-bred. And the behavior and qualities will be known as, their behavior will be known as high class and, a good birth. Low justice will be applied on the basis of one's power. So, how right now we are facing a lot of issues, and, if you read the newspapers or the news, if you see the news, you see there's no law, there's no justice, I've been cheated. It's happening already. And one who has power and money, power means influence over the people who handle law. They give justice to only those with power. In other words, the person who is the victim, they don't get any justice. That's the symptom of Kaliyug. So then, men and women who, there'll be no such thing as marriage as such. They will be living each other based on attraction, and they will be, a good woman or a good man will be recognized by how good they are in, sexual life, rather than marriage based on pious activities. Right now, Hare Krishna communities, we are encouraged to produce children who are Krishna conscious. And so we look at the piety of the prospective father or the mother. None of this is happening outside, and as we know, we already know, and there's a lot of other interchangeable sex life, gender. Women stay with women, men stay with men, and some other crazy things out there which we don't understand. I mean, kids these days in school, they don't know, some of them don't know whether they're a boy or a girl, it's just everything so degraded already. So what to speak of the next 400,000 years? Anyway, so that will be the status. A person's property will be questioned if he doesn't earn a good living. So, text people out there, look at your house and your income, will say, where did you get it? So all that kind of things going to be happening. And those who juggle words will be considered learned. Person can speak well, they'll be learned. I mean, I went to university, and the textbooks that we read was full of nonsense, and they were this thick, that big, and basically it was just a play of words. It didn't really help me in my working life, and I was really, really annoyed. Why are we forced to read all these books? And every year they take out a new edition, or somebody is a new author, and all this is just like a juggle of words, and it's really nonsense, really. But they're known as scholars. That's Kaliyug. Marriage will be, obviously, if there is one, will be a verbal agreement. A Brahman will be recognized just by wearing a thread. He won't really be acting or having pious deeds like a Brahmin. He'll just be wearing a thread. And people will call him a Brahmin. Earth will be crowded and populated with corrupt population. Right now, we already have that. I mean, devotees are encouraged to produce devotee children, so at least there's some good left on this planet. But basically, by the end of this Kaliyug, everybody will be corrupted. And some bad news also, in Kaliyug, we are all Shudras. There's no such thing as Brahmin. And Shudras and barbarians. And our properties and wives, they will be lost to the rulers. The citizens will run to the mountains and forests. There'll be excessive taxes, there'll be famine, people will eat leaves, roots, fresh fruits. There'll be excessive cold, wind, heat, rain, and snow. I mean, we already are experiencing excessive weathers. There'll be quarrels, hunger, thirst, disease, severe anxiety. We already know this. Like there's so many. There's like a hotline right now going for people who are suffering depression, so that the government can help them. They don't commit suicide. I mean, everyone is suffering some kind of anxiety. The bodies will reduce in size. Trees will reduce in size. Cows will be treated like goats, which is really sad right now. Cows are really, really treated badly. It's really, really heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching. We can't even see a photo of it, and some photos are released online. It's just terrible, just terrible. We can't even bear to think about how cows are being treated right now. There'll be stealing, lying, needless violence. So there'll be violence for no reason. It's happening. Spiritual hermitage, where spiritual people are meant to be living. Now, that will be just like a mundane house. So people will be living there rather than practicing spirituality. Clouds will be full of lightning. There'll be no piety. Humans will be like asses. So, and then obviously the story goes that, people will start eating each other. There'll be cannibals. They already are in some parts of the world. If you read certain news, it comes through that children are being killed and eaten, and there's a lot of nasty things happening already. So there'll be cannibals. People will be living underground. There'll be hardly any trees. It'll be in such a terrible state. It gives us more incentive to chant Hare Krishna and get out of this planet from Kaliyug and go back to Godhead. Prabhupada had said this planet Earth is no place for a gentleman or a gentle lady. Now, Chapter 3 is about, so let's see. Chapter 3 is about how Bhumi Devi, she reacts to this this kind of situation, because what happens in Kaliyug is that the kings, they will be fighting for land. They'll be fighting each other. They'll be saying, this land is mine. The other one will be saying, this piece of land is mine. And they'll fight over it. They'll kill each other for it. They'll be all Shudras. They will try to conquer Bhumi's land, basically. They'll try to conquer her. And after they move from the land, they'll go and conquer the sea. It's already happening right now. You can read some news. People are, prime ministers from different countries go to another country and say, well, you owe us this much money, your land is mine. And the prime minister of that country will say, no, this land is mine. And it's another part of the country will say, well, this border is wrong. It's meant to be in our country, it's ours. And so they fight each other. And how Bhumi reacts is she laughs at them because she knows it's a temporary life. How long are you going to fight? 50 years is supposed to be the average life at the end, by the Kaliyug ends. You kill somebody, needless violence, then you own a piece of land, and then you die. What are you going to be able to own? So she has a good laugh at all these kings who do these things, and to all the citizens who are treating Bhumi terribly and doing all sorts of nonsense, unpious things degraded things according to Kaliyug. And she says, well, the goal of life, the spiritual goal of life for liberation is lost. And these people who are fighting over land and sea, they've lost the goal of life, the true goal of life, which is spiritual goal. So she has a good laugh about it. Kaliyug, we've got some news. The men will be controlled by women, apparently. Right now, not so much, but as the world progresses, women will control men. Even though instructed to say the holy names, the people will not worship the Lord at the time of death. So right now we're going around telling everyone, chant Hare Krishna, you'll be saved. Well, they don't want to listen. It's happening. And so even when they're told, they don't do it. So at the time of death, they don't go back to Godhead. They go somewhere else. So that was chapter 3. Now, chapter 4 is the 4 categories of universal annihilation. Annihilation means destruction of this universe as we know it, or this planet. So there are 4 types. 1 is constant, 2nd is occasional, 3rd is material, and 4 is final. So the first one, constant annihilation. Now that is the process of birth and death, transformation. So we are born and then we die. And it happens constantly, unless we chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, unless we take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master and therefore Lord Krishna. We make it back to Godhead. Unless we do that, if we don't do that, then we will constantly be annihilated. So that's a constant annihilation. The next one is occasional annihilation, which is when Lord Brahma sleeps. So everyone sleeps, so does Lord Brahma. Only his sleeping patterns are slightly different from ours. There are 4 ages, right? Satyug, Treta, Dwapar, and Kaliyug. So the 4 cycles, they make one kalpa. 1,000 of those cycles. So 1,000 times 4 makes one kalpa. So in one kalpa, 1,000 cycles of the 4 ages, Lord Brahma then sleeps. And when he, within this cycles, 14 Manus, who are fathers of mankind, they come and go, 14 of them. Anyway, so after the 1,000 cycles finish, Lord Brahma sleeps. And while he's sleeping, Lord Narayan, he lies down upon the bed of Ananta Shesha and absorbs the entire universe. While Lord Brahma is sleeping, so everything is absorbed. And when Lord Brahma wakes, then they're remanifested. So that's the occasional. So every time Lord Brahma sleeps. Third one is the material annihilation, which is when Brahma reaches the 100 years. And in that 100 years, the 7 elements of material nature, an entire universal egg. This universe is like a universal egg, and there are all these materials like our senses. They are also the elements, the wind, the fire, all of this, earth and ether and land. So that, and also the false ego and everything. So they will all be destroyed, and then the entire planets and everything, they'll be like fire, burning for so many thousands of years. There'll be flood, lots, and all these elements, and everything will be destroyed, everything, and they will go back to Lord Narayan, Mahavishnu, Mahatattva. He seizes everything, and there'll be annihilation. He breathes it all in, gone, and so will Brahma. 100 years, so his life ends over there. Then there's the final annihilation, which is to do with when a person, an individual soul, realizes knowledge and reaches Godhead. Like right now we're practicing bhakti, spiritual advancement, and we want to go back to Godhead. So when we chant Hare Krishna, we take, we practice bhakti, spiritual, bhakti yoga. And we have this realization that we are the soul, not the body, and we belong to Krishna, and that's where we should go. And which means we transcend all the rest of the material elements, including the false ego. We transcend everything. And we take shelter with Krishna, and we go back to Godhead. And so that's the final Annihilation. And that was chapter 3. Chapter 4, sorry. And then chapter 5, let's have a look at chapter 5. Okay. So chapter 4, just trying to find the pages, sorry about that. Anyways, like I'm just taking too much time to flip through these pages. 3, here we go. So, the lifespan of Brahma is explained in chapter 4. The measurement of different millenniums and history, of universal history, one day of Brahma's day, and process of annihilation, all of that's covered. Then Sukadev Swami, in chapter 5, he asks for the final instruction to Sukadev Goswami. He says, I have, what are your final instructions? Because so far, Sukadev Goswami was answering all of Pariksit Maharaja's questions. Pariksit Maharaj was due to die in 7 days, and he wanted to know everything. Who is God? What is this creation, and how is this creation destroyed? So, and lots and lots of other stories in between. So Sukadev Goswami was giving him all the information so far. But then finally Sukadev Goswami is asked by Pariksit Maharaj, what are your final instructions? What should I do? And Sukadev Goswami says, you should fix yourself in meditation upon Lord Vasudeva. Lord Vasudeva obviously is Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. You should meditate upon that Lord Vasudeva, and thus the bite of the snake bird will not affect you. Snake bird, the Takshaka, who is destined to bite Pariksit Maharaj. So after he reminds Pariksit Maharaj that, after that he reminds Pariksit Maharaj some other facts, like death is inevitable. Everyone who is born must die. So death is inevitable. But the soul never dies. So he explains to Pariksit Maharaj, you are the soul. And Pariksit Maharaj understands. Just like when we read the Bhagavad Gita, so the discourse was somewhat like that, when Krishna explains to Arjuna that the soul never dies. Pariksit Maharaj is further instructed. He says, O king, give up the animalistic mentality of thinking, I'm going to die. Unlike the body, you have not taken birth. There was not a time in the past when you did not exist. This is what Lord Krishna told Arjuna, and the same thing Sukadev Goswami is telling Pariksit Maharaj. There was not a time in the past when you did not exist, and you are not about to be destroyed. So he consoles and he explains to Pariksit Maharaj and then says, fix yourself in meditation upon the Lord Vasudeva. And the bite of the snake bird will not affect you. I mean, that's how the Vaishnavas are. They're not scared of death. And it's been described that the death, when it comes to the Vaishnavas, pure devotees of the Lord, they feel like, just like the mother cat picks up the baby kitten with the teeth, and the baby kitten, totally relaxes and is very comfortable, but it's being grabbed by the teeth of the mother. So, whereas the non-devotee feels death like, the teeth of a tiger chomping it to death. So there's the difference. So this meditation, he has been advised. Chapter 6 is all about when Pariksit Maharaj explains, after listening to Sukadeva Goswami, his ignorance has been dispelled. So he says, my ignorance has been dispelled. And he has attained the transcendental position of fearlessness and oneness with the Supreme. So that's what should happen to us, really, when we read the Srimad Bhagavatam or the Bhagavad Gita and practice our spiritual life. We should come to that platform of fearlessness of death. And just this morning in the class, in the Srimad Bhagavatam class, when I was reading through some of my notes, and in that I had written from our scriptures, I had grabbed that a spiritual master also prepares the disciple for death. That's one of the duties of the spiritual master, is to prepare us for death. And recent events leading, which is too painful to mention, because there are some disciples who are grieving the departure of their beloved Guru. But in his classes, he had mentioned about death. So he had given the message out. That's what a spiritual master does. So Sukadeva Goswami here has instructed Pariksit Maharaj like a spiritual master, and has brought him to the platform of fearlessness and oneness with the Supreme. So he is not scared of dying. And so what Pariksit Maharaj does in this chapter, as explained, he begs Srila Sukadeva Goswami to permit him to fix his heart upon the lotus feet of the Lord Hari and give up his life. He then sat down in a yogic posture on the bank of Ganga, merged himself in meditation upon the Supersoul. And that's the time that Takshaka bird comes to kill him. So what happens there is Takshaka bird, he flies, this particular snake bird, it's a bird that is a snake, he flies. And on the way he sees Kashyap Muni, and Kashyap Muni, it has the power to remove the poison from snake bites. So he would have, maybe he was on his way, or he was assigned to remove the poison of Takshaka from Pariksit Maharaj. So what the bird does is he says some very flattering, sweet words to Kashyap, and he gives him some gifts, bribery. So he flattered him by presenting him with valuable things and stopped him from saving Pariksit Maharaj, or rather counteracting the poison to save or protect Maharaj Pariksit. So then after he had dealt with Kashyap Muni, he disguised himself as a Brahmin. So he became a Brahmin and then approached the king, and then he bit the king. And this is all over, living entities all over the universe. All over the universe they were watching. And they watched as the king, Pariksit Maharaj, was bitten, and he was immediately burned to ashes by fire of the snake's poison. So it must have been like a Holocaust kind of a poison, like a nuclear bomb or something, because apparently his body was burned to ashes. And immediately there was a cry heard all over the universe. Everyone cried out. And, people showered flowers, and drums were beating, celestial songs were sung. And that was when Pariksit Maharaj left his body. So if you want to read further details, it's in chapter 6 of the 12th Canto. Now, he had a son, Maharaj Janmijay. Maharaj Pariksit had a son, Janmijay, who heard of this news and was terribly angry. And he decided that he's going to kill all the snakes, all of them, including Takshak. So he calls all the Brahmins and priests, all the learned Brahmins who could recite the mantras. So they sat around the yagna, the fire, and they started reciting the mantras. And all the snakes just fell into the fire and died. Well, burned to ashes, they died. All kinds of snakes and serpents. And Maharaj Parikshit's son, Janmijay, was wondering why is Takshak not falling in the fire. What had happened is Takshak actually went and took shelter with Lord Indra. And Lord Indra was protecting him. And actually Lord Indra gave him the nectar of immortality, which means you can never die. So then when Maharaj Janmijay, son of Pariksit Maharaj, came to know this, he said, he told the Brahmin, let's kill them both. So say a mantra that will bring forward both Lord Indra and the bird, Takshaka. So they both were going to be drawn as, they were about to fall in the fire. And then Brahaspati, who is the spiritual master of the heavenly planets, he came and he stopped Janmijay, said, you cannot kill Lord Indra and Takshak, because according to the laws of nature, they are protected. He's drunk the nectar of immortality, so can't die. So now, that was chapter 6. Let's go on to chapter 7. So then Pariksit Maharaj's son listens to Brihaspati, and he says, okay, well, I won't kill them. So he stops. He respects the wishes, and so Takshaka is actually not killed. Now, chapter 7 deals with the Quranic literatures. Now, the Quranic literatures, it describes all the expansion of branches of Atharva Veda. It enumerates the compilers of Puranas and explains the characteristics of every Purana. He then lists the 18 major Puranas and finishes his account by stating that if any person who hears about the matters from someone in a proper disciplic succession will acquire spiritual potency. So, Shuta Goswami, he said, Samantu Rishi, authority on the Atharva Veda, taught his Samhita to his disciple Kabanda, who in turn spoke it to Pathya and Vedarse. So there are different branches. Here we have a Brahman there, Komuda, Saunaka, Jajali, of whom they all knew the Atharva Vedas. So he spoke about Atharva Vedas, which was also, passed down to the rest of the disciples. And Then there were some other authorities on the Puranic literature. Some names they were given: Trayaruni, Kashyap, Savarni, Vaishampanaya, and Harita. There were 6 masters of the Puranas. Each of them studied one of the 6 anthologies of Puranas from my father, Rom Harshana, who was the disciple of Srila Vyasadeva. I became the disciple of the 6 authorities and taught thoroughly, learned all their presentations of Puranic wisdom. So then he speaks on the 4 basic compilations of the Puranas. The sage Kashyap and I, along with Sarvani and Akratavarna, a disciple of Rama, learned these 4 divisions. So basically all these Puranas, who learns what, and the authorities. Now the Puranas, what were the Puranas containing? That's interesting to know. So this is text 9 to 10 of chapter 7 of the 12th Canto. These are topics of the creation of the universe, the subsequent creation of the worlds and beings, the maintenance of all living beings, their sustenance, the rule of various manus, the dynasty of great kings, the activities of such kings, annihilation, motivation, and supreme shelter. Other scholars state that the great Puranas deal with these 10 topics, while lesser Puranas may deal with 5. So, in each age, the infallible Lord appears in this world. So these Puranas will state the pastimes of the Lord when he appears in different ages as an animal, human being, sage, or demigods. By his activities in these incarnations, he protects the universe and kills the enemies of Vedic culture. Of course, in each reign of Manu, there are 6 types of personalities appear, and they are manifestations of Lord Hari, the ruling Manu, the chief of demigods, the sons of Manu, Indra, the great sages, and partial incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Basically, that is it on chapter 7. So, sages expert in ancient histories have declared that the Puranas, according to their various characteristics, can be divided into 18 major Puranas and 18 secondary Puranas. The 18 major Puranas are Brahma, Padma, Vishnu, Shiva, Linga, Garuda, Narada, Bhagavata, Agni, Skanda, Bhavishya, Brahma, Vaivarta, Markandeya, Vamana, Varaha, Matsya, Kurma, and Brahmanda Puranas. These are the major ones. So he basically names all those Puranas. Then chapter 8 is all about Markandeya's prayers to Nar and Narayan Rishi. Now, chapter 8 describes how Markandeya Rishi performed austerities, defeated by his potency, Cupid, and all his associates, and offered prayers to Lord Hari in the form of Nar and Narayan. Sri Sonaka was confused about the extraordinarily long span of life of Sri Markandeya, who had taken birth as in Sonaka's own dynasty, yet had moved about alone in the ocean of devastation millions of years, and previously seen a wonderfully young child upon a banyan leaf. It seemed to Shonaka that Markandeya had lived through 2 days of Brahma, and asked Sri Sutta Goswami to explain this. So Markandeya Rishi was blessed, and he basically lived through 2 annihilations. Nothing happened to him. 2 days of Brahma. And he also saw a wonderful child upon a banyan leaf. So we'll talk about that in the next, a little bit in the next chapter, because this chapter continues. Basically, Sri Sonaka, he asked Sutta Goswami, what was the story behind this. Sutta Goswami, he replied to the sage Markandeya after receiving the purificatory ritual of Brahminical initiation from his father. He fixed himself in a vow of lifelong celibacy. He then worshipped the Supreme Lord Hari for 6 lifetimes of Manu. And in the 7th Manvantara, Lord Indra sent Kamdev, Cupid, and his associates to interrupt the sage's austerities. But Markandeya Rishi defeated them by the potency generated from his penance. So the chapter 7 has got these sections which describe this pastime, this incident where Markandeya Rishi is sitting there in penance, meditating upon the Lord. And Lord Indra is always like trying to save his asan, his rule, and he's always feeling insecure or threatened somehow. And so he, any Brahmas, rishis, munis, sages who do these penances, he tries to stop them somehow. So he has these beautiful damsels, apsaras in the heavenly planets. He sends them down to go and disrupt them. So Markandeya Rishi had taken a vow of celibacy. So he was sitting there, and these ladies came and started to attract him. And this one particular apsara, was playing with balls, juggling the balls or something. And she was wearing something very fragile. That, the belt, as she was running around looking for the ball here and there, the belt of her garments opened and the wind came and blew it away. And Cupid was also sent, obviously, to fire his arrow to Markandeya Rishi. And when Cupid saw this apsara without any garments, without any clothes, he thought, oh, she's successful. But it was just the wind. So he fired that arrow, and at that time Markandeya Rishi opened his eyes, and he was... all this while, Markandeya Rishi was not affected. He was not at all. It didn't affect him in the least bit. He had continued his japa, his chanting, meditation, whatever it was. But once he saw this incident where Cupid was about to fire his arrow, from his potency, he just looked at them. He didn't do anything. And they started feeling as if they were burning. They hadn't actually burnt, but they felt that heat. Immediately they stopped whatever it was they were doing and left. He defeated this Cupid and the apsaras by the potency generated from his penance. And then, to show mercy to Markandeya, Lord Sri Hari appeared before him in the form of Nar and Narayan. Sri Markandeya prostrated himself in obeisance and then worshipped the lords and offered lords by offering them comfortable seats, water for washing their feet, and other respectful presentations. He then prayed, "O Almighty Lord, you bring to life the vital air of all creatures, and you also protect the 3 worlds, vanquish distress, and award liberation. You never allow those who have taken shelter of you to be defeated by any kind of misery. Attaining your lotus feet is the only auspicious goal for these conditioned souls, and service you to fulfills all their desires. Your pastimes, enacted mode of pure goodness, can award everyone salvation from material life. Therefore, those who are intelligent worship your personal form of pure goodness, named Sri Narayan, along with Nara, who represents your unalloyed devotee. The living entity bewildered by illusion can directly understand you. If he receives the knowledge presented in the Vedas and promulgated by you, the spiritual master of the entire universe, even great thinkers like Brahma are simply bewildered when they try to understand your identity by struggling on the path of Sankhya Yoga. You yourself manifest the proponents of Sankhya and other philosophies, and thus your true personal identity remains hidden beneath the designative covering of the Jiva soul. I offer my homage unto you, Mahapurusha." So these are some very nice, lovely prayers. I mean, when God comes in front of you, we have got to be prepared to offer some kind of prayers. But we are not on that platform of Markandeya Rishi, so we may not be be able to offer prayers at such high level. Still, these prayers are very nice and useful to read. So, so he offers, and then at the end of these prayers, he actually, the Lord asks him, what is your desire and what would you like? But I'm just going to read a little bit on the humility by which Markandeya Rishi offers the Lord, Supreme Personality of Godhead, the prayers. He says, I offer my humble obeisances to him, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the all-pervading and all-inclusive form of the universe, as well as its spiritual master. I bow down to Lord Narayan, the supreme worshipable deity appearing as a sage, and also to the saintly Nara, the best of human beings, who is fixed in the perfect goodness, fully in control of his speech, and the propagator of Vedic literatures. So, and then he continues, a materialist, his intelligence perverted by the action of deceptive senses, cannot recognize you at all. Although you are always present within his own senses and heart, and also amongst the objects of perfect perception, yet even though one's understanding has been covered by illusory potency, if one obtains Vedic knowledge from you, the supreme spiritual master of all, he can directly understand you. My dear Lord, the Vedic literature alone reveal confidential knowledge of you, your supreme personality, and thus even such great scholars as Lord Brahma himself are bewildered in their attempt to understand you through empirical methods. Each philosopher understands you according to his particular speculative conclusions. I worship that supreme person, knowledge of whom is hidden by the bodily designations covering the conditioned soul's identity. So these wonderful prayers that Markandeya Rishi offers to Lord Narayan and Nara pleases them so much that Lord Narayan asked Markandeya, he asked, what is your desire? He is satisfied by the prayers of Sri Markandeya had offered. The Supreme Lord told him to ask for a benediction. And the sage said he wanted to see the Lord's illusory energy. And the Supreme Lord Hari present before Markandeya. I mean, imagine Lord Hari present before you. That's like a dream for so many of us. It seems impossible. But for Markandeya Rishi, it was possible. Lord Hari was standing before him in the form of Narayan, because he'd asked to see the illusory energy of the Lord. Narayan replied, so be it. And after that, he left for Badrik Ashram. And Sri Markandeya went to Badrik Ashram. And he was waiting to see the illusory energy. I mean, like Mother Yashoda had a desire to see the entire universe in Lord Krishna's mouth. I mean, we all do, and so do I. I wanted to, so perhaps it's not the time and place. Anyway, I did have a desire to see that, and in one of my dreams, by the mercy of my Guru, I had a little bit of a dream where I saw Lord Krishna, and he did open his mouth, and I was wondering where his teeth were, because I couldn't see his teeth. I could just see black open space. And so I bent down inside his mouth. I mean, turned my head to see. I could see inside his mouth. I couldn't see any teeth. All I could see was black space. And then suddenly I saw something white. And I thought, oh, well, there is a tooth. And no, it wasn't a tooth, it was a planet, a whitish planet, and it was spinning very fast. And then I looked around and I saw so many planets spinning around. So many planets just suspended in air. Well, it's black space and they were spinning. And we were traveling at a great speed towards one of the planets. So I had seen part of the universe in my dream. Thanks to Gurudev, I think. So, anyway, so he is Markandeya Rishi, and he had this desire to see Lord's illusory energy, which just means the material energy, how things are annihilated, how they're created, the entire cosmos, how it works on his energy. So he had that desire, and Lord Narayan said, yes, you can. So then one day, as Sri Markandeya was offering his evening prayers, the water of devastation suddenly flooded the three worlds. The three worlds, the upper, the lower, the middle. So Earth is in the middle, the hellish planets are below, and the heavenly planets are above. So the three worlds was suddenly flooded with water, or devastation. With great difficulty, Markandeya moved about all alone in this water for a long time, until he came upon a banyan tree. Lying upon a leaf of that tree was an infant boy glowing with a charming effulgence. As Markandeya moved towards the leaf, he was pulled in by the boy's inhalation, just like a mosquito drawn within his body. So later on, there's a very elaborate description in the text. He's like for I don't know how many thousands of years. It felt like he was in the devastation, but he was unhurt. He was extremely exhausted and tired, but he was not hurt. And then he comes across a beautiful little baby on a banyan leaf. We sometimes see this. I've actually got this deity of Lord Krishna and a banyan leaf. It's a very small deity, obviously, but he is beautiful, lying on a banyan leaf, and he's holding one of his toes and sucking it, putting it in his mouth. So that's whom he saw, Markandeya. Sri Markandeya saw this little baby who was looking so beautiful that he forgot his tiredness, he forgot all the dissolution that was going around him, he forgot everything. He forgot his exhaustion. He was just looking at the baby, and then the baby, Lord Krishna, he, Supreme Personality of Godhead, he lifted his toe, lifted his leg with his hands and put one of his toe in his mouth and started sucking it. It's just unbelievably beautiful. Then he takes a deep breath, and Markandeya Rishi is absorbed inside the little baby. He was pulled in by the boy's inhalation, just like a mosquito drawn within his body. Inside the boy's body, Markandeya was amazed to see the entire universe, just as it had been before at the annihilation. So Markandeya had watched the whole annihilation. Then he went inside the baby, and then he saw the universe as it was before the annihilation. And after a moment, the sage was carried out by the force of the child's exhalation. So then after that, the child exhaled, the baby. He exhaled and he was hurled back out. So he managed to see the whole universe. He saw the annihilation, how the devastation occurs, everything he saw that. He came out of the baby. And then once he came out, he realized that the child on the leaf was actually Sri Hari, the transcendental Lord situated within his own heart. And Sri Markandeya tried to embrace him. But at that moment, Lord Hari, the master of all mystic power, disappeared. So he didn't let Markandeya Rishi embrace him. Then the waters of annihilation disappeared. So everything disappeared. And Sri Markandeya found himself in his own ashram just as before. So just like before, everything was normal, he went back. But it was his desire to see everything, so Lord Hari very kindly, mercifully fulfilled that desire. I mean, even when I woke up from my dream of the universe, I mean, I woke up, everything was normal. But for a minute there, I was traveling in space. It was a very nice experience. Obviously, I cannot take credit for it. But those experiences are wonderful. If Lord Krishna is kind enough to give you a spiritual master who is of that level, who can bestow mercy on his disciples, that they can see the universe while they are still in their own homes and dreaming in their own beds. So then the story continues. Let's have a look at the time. We've got some time, 15 minutes. In this chapter 10 of the Canto 12, Lord Shiva, it's titled Lord Shiva and Uma Glorify Markandeya Rishi. So in this chapter, Sri Suta Goswami describes how Markandeya Rishi received benedictions from Lord Shiva. Once as Lord Shiva was traveling in the sky with his wife, Parvati, he came across Sri Markandeya merged into the meditative trance. At the request of Parvati, Lord Shiva presented himself before the sage to grant him the result of austerities. Actually, I am over time. I have chapter 10. So what I'm going to do is just going to summarize the rest of the chapters and end, because I'm over time. There comes a time when Lord Shiva and Uma Devi see Markandeya Rishi and give him this benediction that he will have a long life and freedom from death, old age, and universal dissolution. And they were pleased with him, so they give him this benediction. And that's why he's still around today. So that was basically the gist of chapter 10. I'll quickly talk about chapter 11 and try to finish it off. Chapter 11 is all about the summary description of the Mahapurusha, which is the universal form of the Lord, and Lord Hari. He is the indwelling controller of the universe and the original creator, and he manifests himself in the form of the demigod sun, the sun. And sages describe this sun god in many features according to his different material designations to sustain the world. His potency of time as the sun travels throughout the world in the 12 months, beginning with Chaitra, along with 12 sets of personal associates. One who remembers the opulences of the personality of Godhead, Sri Hari, in this form, as the sun, will become free from sinful reactions. So that was chapter 11. We try to go on to chapter 12. I'll just summarize it since we're running out of time, and I want to finish it off actually tonight. And basically, the Srimad Bhagavatam is summarized in chapter 12. So all these topics that we have heard, right from the cosmic creations to the time when, Lord Ram's pastimes, Lord Krishna's pastimes, story of Daksha, story of all these, the four Sanatan Kumars, story of Sukanya. All these stories is basically described, listed, that we have covered all these things in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So basically it's a recap of everything. Then we come to the final chapter of 13 in the Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 12. That is, it says, in this final chapter, Sri Suta Goswami describes the length of each of the Puranas. along with the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam, its purpose, how to give it as a gift. So it's our duty to give the Srimad Bhagavatam as a gift. I remember giving the first canto to someone years ago. I hadn't realized it's actually at that time that it is written down in our Srimad Bhagavatam that we should give it as a gift. The glories of such gift giving is given, and the glories of chanting and hearing it. So here it says all of the Puranas that we had covered back in chapter, was it 8 or 9? All the Puranas put together, there are 400,000 verses. And 18,000 of these verses are constituted in or contained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the Srimad Bhagavatam, if anyone wants to know, there are 18,000 verses. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, instructed Brahma in the Srimad Bhagavatam, whose narrations produce detachment from matter, and which contains the essence of all Vedanta. One who gives the Srimad Bhagavata Purana as a gift will attain the highest destination. Amongst all the Puranas, Srimad Bhagavatam is the highest, is the best, and it is the most dear thing to Vaishnavas. It reveals that spotless supreme knowledge accessible to Paramahamsas, and it also reveals the process by which one can become free from the reactions of material work. A process enriched with knowledge, renunciation, and devotion. Having thus glorified the Bhagavatam, Sutta Goswami meditates upon Sri Narayan as the original absolute truth, who is perfectly pure, free from all contamination, devoid of sorrow, and immortal. Then he offers obeisances to the great yogi, Sri Sukadev, who is non-different from the absolute truth. Finally, praying with true devotion, Sutta Goswami offers respects to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Hari, who takes away all misery. And that concludes our summarization of the readings of chapter of Canto 12 of Srimad Bhagavatam. So I believe that on this coming Thursday, we are having Julan Ratra, and there will be a talk tomorrow by Ghanshyam Prabhu about the cosmic, Vedic cosmic situation. And the next readings will start from August 4th. So thank you for listening, and have a good evening, have a good night. Hare Krishna, Srimad Bhagavat Puran ki Jai.